Hey everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again. I'm going to do a review now of the movie Extraction, which is a Netflix produced action thriller. It is produced by the Russo brothers, who we all know are most famous for producing some of the biggest movies within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whether it's Captain America Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and of course most recently Avengers Endgame. The MCU connection continues throughout because we have Chris Hemsworth, of course, who plays Thor. He's in the lead character, and also the director Sam Hargrave, who was actually the stunt coordinator for a lot of the MCU movies that were produced by the Russo brothers. So the original setup of Extraction is that we are in the country of Bangladesh and the city of Dhaka, and we have a young son here called Ovi, and he is abducted by drug gangsters, and he turns out that he is the son of one of India's biggest drug lords out there, and basically he's been held for ransom. And Chris Hemsworth's character is a kind of a black market mercenary, former special forces soldier, and he's enlisted with the mission of rescuing the young boy. So that is basically the basic setup of Extraction, and as we go through the story we find out there are kind of double crosses, and essentially the whole city is put on lockdown, and the narrative, or the story rather, is an essential chase story or one of survival, as Chris Hemsworth and the young boy basically have to get through point A to point A to point C, and they come under various amounts of adversity and struggles as they try to basically survive throughout on here. So Extraction is a very intense, spectacular, very gripping, intense action thriller on here. The action sequences are shot very crisp and very refined, they're very pristine, and the violence is very intense, it's very stark and very in your face, and I think that's what helps make it such a kind of gripping action adventure. There are various amounts of tension and peril and danger throughout on there. You really get that sense of intensity, and the characters are constantly in danger, and you feel that they could be killed at any point without the story. So I think in terms of what it wants to do, basically be this kind of non-stop action, intense survival narrative, Extraction does its job very well on here. I noted before that the director Sam Hargrave is a stunt coordinator, and what he actually does well in terms of staging the action is that he avoids the shaky cam kind of aesthetic that has plagued so many films, if you like, the early to mid 90s, early 2000s. Most notably we look at the kind of likes of the Bourne Identity movies, right? And those are very good movies, but of course it's very difficult to make out what's going on if you have the camera shaking about all over the place. And Sam Hargrave as a director, he avoids that here. You can clearly make out everything that's going on in the fight scenes and the car chases throughout on here. So again, that just enhances your viewing experience on here. Chris Hemsworth in the lead, I think he does okay for what he's given. This is a situation where the actor doesn't really have a lot of material to build on and make his own impression as a character on here. In terms of the physicality, Chris Hemsworth does a very good job. You can clearly see that he's doing the majority of his own stunts, and I think that always helps from a viewing experience when you have the actual lead character and you can see them actually involved in the fight scenes and in the car chases and all the kind of running and punches and kicks that have been thrown out on here. So Chris Hemsworth is a very good physical embodiment. I wouldn't say necessarily unstoppable force, but he's a very much of a capable and competent soldier throughout on it. I noted before about the action sequences, and again, it's very intense. You see lots of people being punched through walls and kicked through glasses and shot in the head, shot in the arms, heavily wounded, stabbings and knife fights throughout on it. So it's very much, if you're faint-hearted, then you're not really enamored too much by violent set pieces, this may not be for you, because it doesn't hold back, it doesn't put its punches, and again, this adds a lot more to the kind of visual experience, that it keeps it at an efficient pace. You're constantly on the edge, you'll see, you're constantly compelled to what's going on screen on it. You're never bored, or your attention doesn't waver too much. Now we go on to the more bad elements of that, and primarily the fact that there is a lack of characterization, there is a lack of depth. we basically get one or two scenes with Chris Hemsworth as he kind of makes reference to his backstory and what happened to him in the past, but we don't delve too much more into that. The relationship between him and the boy isn't really layered too much. They don't really build too much on the dynamic between the two characters. It tries to play on it more of this very emotive music and well shot kind of slow motion sequences, but you just don't get the feeling that you really care about these characters. You could have replaced them with any two other characters who are in the role and the film wouldn't be worse off for it, and I think that's a failing to it. If we compare it to other movies of a similar tone and subject matter, one example comes to mind is Man on Fire, right? That was the revenge thriller released back in 2004, starring Denzel Washington and Dakota Fanning, and that did a far better job of building a much more of a stronger emotional connection and emotional bond to these characters. So when you do get the action set pieces, it carries a lot more weight to it. If we look at other similar movies in the tone, we look at the likes of The Kingdom or Argo or Munich, and what those films did, they had a much more of a worldlier perspective of what was going on. So throughout Extraction, we see young kids getting involved in weaponry and drugs throughout alike, right? Now, the films I just mentioned would have a much more of a social commentary of what's going on within the world or within the city that we're inhabiting here. But Extraction doesn't want to do any of that. It doesn't want to make any kind of perspective or commentary on what's going on. It wants to stay solely focused on the kind of chase narrative and action beats on here. So what you miss as a viewer is a lack of depth, it's a lack of kind of context, it's a lack of kind of perspective and any kind of thought-provoking material, thought-provoking potential that we could have had on here. And Extraction doesn't want to really come out of its box, if you like. It's lacking a bit of ambition in terms of a much more of a conceptual idea. So as you go on through the movie, you kind of feel a bit of an emptiness, a bit of a soulless feel about this as the movie progresses. Like I said, you're never bored, you're always excited and you're always compelled by what's going on. But when you get to the end of the movie, you kind of feel less of a satisfaction. You don't get that lasting impression that I think the other movies that I've mentioned managed to do a lot more, as well as produce the big action beats that Extraction does so very well at on here. Like I said, Chris Hemsworth, he does fine in a role, and I know that recently he likes to do the more comedic roles, particularly if we look at for Ragnarok and Men in Black International, and prior to that Ghostbusters as well. But I actually like this more serious tone here. I think he is a good enough and capable enough actor if you give him the right material in terms of an emotional level. Okay, so he can do the physical part and he looks the part, he can do that very well. But if you give him the more character depth and the character material, I think he can actually pull it off. He's a very solid leading actor. He just needs that more textured and depth in terms of the persona that he's playing to get, I think, better results on here. But I would like to see him take on this more substantial kind of roles. I think he fares far better here, and you can exhibit a much more of a personality and of a charisma if he's given the range to do that on here. So those are my thoughts on Extraction. If I had to give it a rating, I would give it a 6.9 out of 10. Like I said, it's very good at what it does. It's very intense. It's very spectacular. It's very exciting. And you are compelled to constantly watch what's going on here. But it does lack a certain chemistry, a certain characterization about it. It feels a lot more like a video game. And when I say that, I'm not talking about CGI. I'm talking about more how the plot follows. So basically we have characters going from this room to that room to that room, this level here, they take out a few characters here, they enter this room, they take out a few characters here. So if you basically know the Call of Duty video game, you basically know what I'm talking about here. It's got that kind of very first person POV style shoot 'em up on here. And after a while it can get a bit repetitive, although the violence is very sharp on here. Again, because you're not invested by what's going on, it kind of disengages you and creates a disconnect from the actual characters themselves. We do have very great visual shots. There's a very good kind of one tracking motion that sequence that a lot of these films do nowadays on here. gives you that impression that everything's happening kind of real time on here, and that's very well done. It's very expertly put together. But like I said again, if you're not engaged with the characters, it does leave you with an empty sense and a kind of dissatisfaction when you watch the end of the movie. So those are my thoughts on Extraction. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Was this something that you thought was a good movie to watch? Again, I think in these current times that we're in, I think it's a very good movie to go on Netflix. I'm not sure how well it would have done if it was released theatrically. Again, I think that depends on the kind of period it would be released in. I wouldn't think it would be a summer blockbuster. I think you'd have to kind of release it in maybe October, November time to kind of get it that more of an adult, mature like audience, and maybe it would have been successful on here. But I think in terms of a Netflix production, it's fine on here, and you can watch it, you can enjoy it. Like I said, just if you're a bit faint-hearted, the violence may take you back a bit, and you may wince away from the kind of intensity and the stark nature of the fight sequences themselves. But I think, yeah, this is worth a compelling watch, and I think you can enjoy it, and I think it's a good vehicle for Chris Hemsworth on here. I just think I would have liked a bit more depth and characterization within the characters themselves. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will provide more reviews as I go on here, particularly of the Netflix productions. But those are my thoughts for now. Please like and subscribe and help this channel to grow. Stay at safe distances, take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.